Felicitous greetings, fellow fanatics.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Fanatic, and today we're taking a look at Smash Up Disney Edition, a collaboration between AEG and The Op. Following on last year's Marvel set, this is the second set that the two have done together. If you're already familiar with Smash Up and just want to know how this one handles as an expansion, you may wish to skip ahead to the timestamp on screen. For the rest of you, let's dive into the basics. In Smash Up, 2 to 4 players will each take 2 factions of 20 cards each and shuffle them together to make a 40 card deck, then draw 5 cards to form a starting hand. You'll also have a single deck of bases which is shuffled during setup, and you'll reveal bases equals the number of players plus 1. Place each one on a base board. Take a breakpoint tracker and place it on the number in the top left corner of the card, and place a power tracker on the 0 space. The object of the game is to be the first player to score 15 victory points. You do this by claiming points on bases. We'll get into the details about that in a little bit. Each turn consists of 5 phases. Firstly is the start of turn phase, where you simply resolve the effects of any cards on the table that state they take place at this time. In particular, many talents will stop working at this point. I'll explain those in a moment. The second phase is the play cards phase, where the meat of the game takes place. In Smash Up, there are 2 types of cards, characters and actions. If you're mixing Disney with other sets, please keep in mind that minion and character are completely interchangeable for all intents and purposes. On your turn, you may play up to 1 character and 1 action in whichever order you choose, although many things can allow you to play extra cards. When you play a character, you'll choose a base and play them there. For some bases, this may activate an ability, and characters often have abilities of their own. Some characters' abilities activate when they're played, while others are constant ongoing effects. Still others will have talents which can be activated at will once per turn during each of your own turns. Actions likewise come in multiple flavors. Most will simply resolve their effect and be discarded, though you also have a number of base modifier and character modifier cards. When you play these, they'll remain in play until they're specifically destroyed or the card they're attached to leaves play. If you're mixing in other sets, keep in mind that play on a base and play on a minion are the same as base modifier and character modifier respectively. I should also take a brief moment to explain power counters. A number of factions, including those in this set, have the ability to place power counters on your characters in order to strengthen them. You simply place a VP token on them for each counter that's added this way. Many abilities will specifically add or remove power counters, and this should be tracked separately from their power modified by other means. If anything changes a base's breakpoint or the total power on there, be sure to update the respective tokens. Keep in mind that the power on the base is the total power of all players, not just the active player. The third phase of each turn is the scoring phase. At this point, you'll check each base to see if it breaks, which will score it during that turn. Each character on a base gives its player power. If the total power of all players' characters is equal to or greater than the base's breakpoint in the top left corner of the card, then that base scores. For example, the Sultan's Palace requires 18 power to break. If multiple bases break, they're resolved in the order of the active player's choosing. For each base that scores, players first have the option of playing any before a base scores cards. After all players have passed on that option, you'll then award victory points. In the case of the Palace, the player with the most power on the base would take 3 victory points. In our example here, that would be the Beauty and the Beast and Aladdin player. The player with the second most power gets 2 VP, which in this instance would be the Mulan and Big Hero 6 player. When playing with 3 or 4 players, the player with the third highest power would gain 1 VP. But you must have at least 1 power on a base to claim any victory points. Once victory points have been distributed, you then resolve any after base scores effects, including playing cards if players are able to do so. Finally, you'll discard all cards that were played on that base, as well as the base itself, and draw a new base to replace it. You'll repeat this process until all bases that are eligible for scoring have done so. It's possible that events during scoring one base may cause another to break in the process. The fourth phase you have is the draw phase. At this point, you'll draw 2 cards from the top of your deck. Then, if you have more than 10 in your hand, you'll discard down until only 10 remain. Finally, you have the end of turn phase. Similarly to the start of turn phase, certain card effects activate at this time. Many card effects are only active during your own turn and will stop working now. And those are the basics of how to play. There are other complexities, especially when mixing in other sets, but that's everything you need to know to play the Disney Edition. So without further ado, let's take a look at those new factions. There's a special order to how I've chosen to show them off. Let me know in the comments below if you can figure out what it is. Firstly, we have Beauty and the Beast, which is a discard-focused faction. Many cards have abilities which will require you to discard from your hand in order to activate them. However, you also have a number of cards such as Break the Curse, Ever Surprise, or Enchanted Objects, which will allow you to play them when they're discarded from your hand. Meanwhile, Petals of the Rose and Be Our Guest help mitigate the cost of discarding by giving you benefits for doing so. Next up is Aladdin, which also has a discard focus, mixed in with a focus on actions. Again, a number of cards have abilities that require you to discard cards from your hand in order to play them, but this time around, you can only discard actions. On top of that, many cards will allow you to draw actions in your hand more quickly, play extra actions, or even play your opponent's actions. But perhaps the most unique feature of this faction are the trio of Wish cards. The genie must be in play in order for you to use them, and when you do, you get to choose from one of 3 especially powerful effects. Draw 4 cards, give a character 5 power until the end of turn, or play 2 extra cards. But they can't be Wish.
3 wishes to be exact, and ixnay on the wishing for more wishes.
The catch is that once you play a wish, it's not discarded, but rather goes back into the box and is removed for the rest of the game. Now on to the Nightmare Before Christmas. This faction is all about character modifiers. You'll have ways to draw extra character modifiers, play extra ones, as well as a few characters that are empowered by them. You'll also find that said character modifiers have 2 very different effects. One helps you when you play it on your own characters, while the other hinders your opponent if played on theirs. This ensures that you'll always have plenty of options with your actions. Now we have the Lion King, which is focused around cards that have effects when discarded, and cards that are affected by what's in your discard pile. The biggest key to this faction is none other than Mufasa, who not only has an unusually high 6 power, but also places 4 power counters on other characters when he's discarded from play. Beyond that, a number of cards are specifically empowered when Mufasa is in your discard pile, incentivizing you to quickly play and be rid of the strongest character in your own faction. After that, we move on to Mulan. This is a power counter heavy faction with lots of cards that place power counters on your characters and a number of characters that trigger their effects when a power counter is placed upon them, including the eponymous Mulan herself. You also have a fair bit of character destruction as well, although it's not the primary focus of this faction. Onwards to Wreck-It Ralph, this is again a faction with a split focus. Firstly, you have a fair number of base modifier actions, which stay around so long as the base itself does, as well as a number of cards to find and play them more quickly. The other focus of the faction is movement. The Sugar Rush themed cards allow you to move characters around and empower them when doing such. Unfortunately, due to the complications of copyright, they couldn't get any of the actual video game characters in here, but Ralph was in Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed, so he sort of counts now, right? Although on that note, why Ralph and not Vanellope? She's constantly trying to sneak into a racing game in the movie, whereas Ralph never actually races, so wouldn't she have made more sense for the cameo? But I'm getting off topic here. Getting back to Smash Up, we have the Frozen faction, which is all about recursion and internal synergy. Often, playing one character will let you search your deck or discard for another. For example, Sven allows you to search for Kristoff, Kristoff allows you to search for Anna allows you to search for Elsa, and Elsa allows you to search for Marshmallow or Olaf. This makes it a lot easier to play your heavy hitters early on, and then return them to your hand to be used again as the game goes on. And finally, we have Big Hero 6. Does this count as Smash Up's 9th Marvel faction? Regardless, this is another power counter focused faction. In addition to the obvious inclusion of a number of cards that both grant and allow you to move power counters, you'll also find that the eponymous team of superheroes gain extra effects when they have power counters on them. On a quick note about theme, you'll notice that many of the actions are named after lines from the films or the titles of their songs. Additionally, each movie's respective villain is not a character, but rather an action card. Wait a minute.
Westergaard.
Now, I distinctly remember that Han's surname is of the Southern Isles.
But Hans is not a stranger.
Oh yeah? What's his last name?
Of the Southern Isles.
Anna lied to us. She lied to all of us. So how well does this hold up in the grand scheme of things? It certainly feels like the mechanics are a little safer than the ones in the Marvel set were. While Wish and Mufasa both feel like they're trying something new, it's nothing as drastically different as the Sinister Six or the Masters of Evil, where the entire faction felt like something fresh. Beauty and the Beast is probably the closest that we have to that, and even that's fairly mechanically similar to the Sumo Wrestlers faction. That being said, the mechanics are still fun, and it does mix well with other sets. Of course, if you're one of those that hates reused artwork, you're not going to like these cards, as they all take screen grabs from their respective films. Although this does give the artwork a consistency that the Marvel set lacked. Once again, the victory tokens are quite generic. We don't get the theme tokens that we're used to having from other sets. But on the bright side, they do have an opposite side which is specifically designated for use as power counters, perhaps reducing the confusion for newer players. On the subject of newcomers, how well does this title rank as an entry point for newcomers? Honestly, it's pretty strong. Much like the Marvel set before it, the faction dividers each include a brief overview of the faction in question. Beyond that, the base trackers will make it easier for players to keep track of how much power is on a base and how close it is to breaking. And as another added bonus, the rulebook even includes suggestions for how to pair the factions from this set. The factions aren't as complicated as those in the Marvel set, but they are a bit more complicated than those included in the original base game. All in all, I'd still say that the original set wins out by a small margin just because of the simpler factions and the greater variety between them. But Disney is a very close second. Of course, if you're like me and already has everything that Smash Up has to offer, you're going to want to add this one to your collection regardless. The mechanics are solid, and as always, it gives you more options. In conclusion, I find Smash Up Disney Edition to be worthy a respectable 8.2 out of 10. If you're interested in purchasing Smash Up Disney Edition, I suggest first checking with your friendly local game store to see if they carry it in stock. If you're unable to find it, or simply wish to learn more, links are included in the description. But what about you? What do you think of Smash Up Disney Edition? What's your favorite pairing with the new factions? If you have any questions, remarks, or opposing points of view, leave them in the comments down below. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. If you really enjoy my work, please consider funding my channel on Patreon. Until next time, farewell, fellow fanatics. Thank you again for watching. I have plenty more to share with you if you're interested. You can click up here above my head to subscribe to my channel. You can click over here on my monitor to see the most recent video that I've worked on. Or if you prefer, you can click up here to open this mysterious vault and see what video that the YouTube algorithm has picked just for you.